and we are up. This is the Our Town Podcast, episode number 4. And sitting across from me is a man that I actually owe an apology to. I just met him, but in the first episode, when I had Ricky on, Ricky Fernandez from the Rocket City Trash Pandas, from 103.9 The Bullpen on the Ump, I was referring to you as TonyMac. I'm sorry, T-Mac, instead of TonyMac. And the reason being is I work for Mantech, and last year we had 2 acquisitions that we made that were notable. One was a company called Griffin Technologies, and one was a company called T-Mac. And so I think he did a good job of not necessarily trying to correct me and make me feel bad, but I thought about it later. I'm like, his name's TonyMac, not T-Mac.
It's a good sports nickname, man. T-Mac, TonyMac works fine. It's just a play off my name. You know, I kind of just smushed it together, Antonio MacBeath, TonyMac. So
yeah.
Actually, it was given to me in college as a radio intern.
Really?
So, yeah. I didn't come up with it myself, but I let it ride. It was a pretty good sports nickname. So T-Mac's fine. I'm not publicly traded.
Yeah,
but,
there you go.
T-Mac works.
So MacBeath, is it Macbeth or MacBeath?
It's spelled MacBeath, but it's Macbeth, and it happens a lot.
Right.
I get people I've known for years call me MacBeath and have no idea. So it's Macbeth.
And that's Scottish, but Antonio. So so give me the kind of the origin of your first name. Where did it come from?
So I was originally going to be a Brandon. I was born, and my mom decided last minute, you don't look like a Brandon, so she named me Antonio. My biological dad, who I don't know, he was supposed to be part Spanish, part Italian. So, and I'm judging by my original last name, before I was adopted by David Macbeth, my dad, definitely Hispanic. We actually have I can't remember which one we did. I think we did Ancestry DNA. It's out right now, and we're supposed to be getting the results back soon. So I'm curious to see how much Italian and Hispanic I do have in me. I know I have Hispanic in me, but one of my best friends said his whole life he was just like me. He had Hispanic in him. He got that done, and he has none. So I'm really curious to see the results when it comes back. But I know I've got Hispanic in me a little bit. So I always tell people it's Italian and Hispanic because that's what I am.
Yeah.
So hopefully I still am some Italian when that comes back.
That'd be cool. When are you expecting that to come back?
I got a text from them last week. It's in stage 5 out of 7, expecting it 2 to 4 weeks.
Really?
So,
well, that's exciting.
yeah. Oh yeah. I'm pretty pumped up about that. I've been wanting one of these done for a while.
Right. So where were you born?
I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Really?
I did not stay there long. My mom's she was born in California, but she grew up in Vegas, her and her 7 brothers and sisters. And then she moved to Alabama when I was like 10 months old and met my dad. And then they had my brother and lived in the Muscle Shoals probably till I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we moved up to Tennessee.
Okay.
And it about 45 minutes west of Nashville, 30 minutes, 45, depending on who's driving. And I grew up there until I finished high school. And afterwards, my dad, who's from Alabama, he was living in Harvest at the time. He grew up in the Shoals. He went to Coffee High School. He grew up out there, and he really wanted me to go to UNA. So I moved down here in 2010 to go to UNA. Things didn't work out the way I wanted them to, so I had to take some time out of school. Took a year off, got a full-time job, saved up, went to Calhoun Community College out here for 2 years, and then put myself through UNA, and then got a job back out here in radio this way in 2016, moved back out here with my now wife in 2018. Just been trying to get in the community ever since.
Yeah. Okay, I don't want to completely jump ahead, but so ties to Alabama, ties to Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
But you're an Oklahoma fan.
So, yes. So now, I told you about my biological dad, I don't know, and then my dad who adopted me when I was 10 months old, and then my mom and him didn't work out. So she met my stepdad when she moved to Tennessee. My stepdad is from Seminole, Oklahoma, which is about an hour outside of Norman, and he's been watching Oklahoma football since I can remember. So I grew up in his household. I grew up in SEC country, so the tradition of football being a heavy presence, but I grew up with that being put into Oklahoma.
Makes sense. We talked a little bit before we came on the air. I tried to do some research on the guest, but they also want to be surprised.
Oh, yeah.
So I knew that you were a Tennessee fan, an Oklahoma fan from something I came across, right, in trying to do research. But I always like to say, so how did that go down? So, okay, makes sense.
Yeah. As much as my co-hosts want to paint me as an Auburn fan, I'm an Oklahoma fan. Yeah.
Well, and then let me just jump to the internet real quick. I want to show your guys' homepage for 103.9. So I'm going to switch over. And what I noticed here, so you just came from work.
Yeah, oh yeah,
You're
right here.
on 103.9 FM. It's The Ump, and the program is the Bullpen with TonyMac.
That's right.
Co-host of Ricky Fernandez and Clint.
Clint Lamb.
Clint
Correct.
Lamb. And it has the Roll Tide in the menu here, and podcasts and the Braves. So is that something kind of as a station, like, all right, we're all in on Alabama and Roll Tide? Where does Auburn fit in, or any other school, or?
So a lot of that has to do with being as small as we are over there at Cumulus. We have other people handle the website and stuff, and it's a little behind. There's some things coming with the website and the app, so that may be why it's not as updated. But we used to be an Alabama affiliate, and I mean, I'm sure they kept the tab on there because Alabama. We used to be a Braves affiliate, but now we're a Trash Panda affiliate. We can't carry Braves games because we have the Trash Pandas.
Okay.
So it has a lot to do with past connections and just failure to keep up with it a little bit. So on the website.
No, that's fine. And I think having moved from Virginia to here, I'm like, all right, it's kind of like politics. Am I supposed to pick a side? And if I do, like, not disclose it, like.
They want you to disclose it. You have to pick a side, and they want you to disclose it. I refuse to pick a side, so they picked a side for me and are demanding that that's what I am because my wife's an Auburn fan. So
right, okay. Let's talk about the program. So you're in Athens, and you guys do that from 2. You do it from 2 to 5.
Yeah,
you kind of lead that show, and then they kind of come in and out. Talk to me a little bit about how you got into broadcasting. And, so, do you remember that kind of first seedling that was planted in your brain? You're like, man, I think I want to pursue this as a career.
Absolutely. It kind of spiraled into wanting to do just talk radio, but originally it was, broadcasting football games and wanting to do that because my stepdad and I, that was kind of how we bonded. We don't necessarily, we get along great, but we just couldn't coexist a ton growing up because he was super strict, and there was just a lot of things we couldn't watch when he was around and do. Football was that one thing where I could always have sports on, and it would be fine. I wouldn't have to feel like I'm walking on eggshells when he comes in the room.
Right.
And then, he could sit down and we could bond together. And Oklahoma football is where we took off, and we watched since probably I got into it really heavy when I was in the 6th grade, and it just grew into us every Saturday. Didn't matter what was going on. We put everything decide to watch Oklahoma football together, and you watch enough football, you know what's happening, and you kind of understand how the commentators are going to talk. Well, every time a play would happen or a fumble would happen, no matter what would happen, we would say exactly what the broadcasters would say right before they said it.
Right.
So, you have enough people point that out to you. You think you're onto something. You're young. Sports is fun, right? You might want to do that. So I decided around then, probably junior, senior in high school, that's what I wanted to do. In some capacity, I wanted to be involved in talking about sports.
And when was the first time you had kind of a gig and an opportunity to be behind the mic, whether it was play-by-play or a color analyst? Was that high school, college?
Actually, it didn't really happen until college because in high school I was known we had a really small high school in Tennessee, 600 students, probably 650 total, 150 graduating class. I was in the drum line growing up, so I was part of the people that they knew me as the guy at the drums. So I went to college down here, and it probably wasn't until you got into your major classes where I got actual experience behind a microphone, probably 2016, senior year in college.
Wow. So okay. But a lot of in your mind you were developing as far as practicing, observing.
So much practice. Oh my goodness. So much practice in the car and everything. I mean, as embarrassing as that sounds, I would drive around and practice introing a show and trying to put on a radio voice. And,
right.
And especially even when I got the gig with the Trash Pandas and they told me I was going to be the PA guy several years ago, I would practice saying people's names in the car that made up names and announcing because I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to be really good. Mm-hmm. That's how I've always been. I've never necessarily stood out as really naturally great at something. I've always had to work really hard to do stuff. So as soon as you have an idea that you're going to do something, I practice driving around in my car.
Yeah.
So
well, and I always tell people it's not until you put the headphones on that you actually can kind of enter a different dimension. And because when you don't have the headphones on, then you're acutely aware of everything else going on around you. And sometimes it can be, you can get maybe embarrassed or self-conscious about what you're saying. But when you put the headphones on, you kind of enter your own world. You enter that personality, kind of like you're saying, or whatever you're trying to maybe a different personality, a different way of speaking,
Sure.
or different character. I think you were talking a little bit how Ricky is really good at that of maybe having an on-air persona, public persona versus the real Ricky. Can I actually tell you something really funny? So in the first episode, I, being new to Huntsville, I wasn't sure like how much of a celebrity you are or a Ricky is, right? So I said something to the effect of a man who needs no introduction. And he was like, well, I kind of probably do need an introduction. So yesterday I was getting my haircut at the Great Clips over here off of 72. And I go in there and, you start talking to the lady who was cutting my hair. And it turns out she went to Bob Jones High School. Ricky graduated in 2009. I think she graduated in 2010. So at some point I just throw it out there. Hey, do you know Ricky Fernandez? She goes, who? No, I'm like, oh, I'm like, well, maybe Ricky does need an introduction. And she was like, I was like, you never heard of him from the Trash Pandas or Sports Radio? She's like, nope.
It's a good humble check there. I like that.
Is that even deflating for you as the public address announcer at the Pandas, right? So if you go to a Pandas home game, when they say, Trey Cabbage is coming up to bat, that's your voice. Right, and you're the lead announcer. Is it ever frustrating if someone isn't aware, and you kind of think that they should be aware?
I don't feel like we've gotten that sense of entitlement yet, and Ricky doesn't have a sense of entitlement, but he should be more noticeable than me anyway. He was on a gigantic morning show, the Mojo Radio Show, for a long time, and he's developed his personality there, and he moved it over to us on the Ump, and he's got the Trash Panda gig now. He's the face there. But us on the show, us together, me, him, and Clint together, recognized as the Bullpen or even as the Trash Pandas, we just kind of started it. Like I got the weekday gig about 2 years ago. I'd been doing weekends before that. And then I produced like a news talk show. I was known a little from listeners from other stuff. And Ricky's been known from other things, but like we just kind of got it started. I don't feel like you should have a sense of entitlement and people should know you. I'm kind of earning people knowing who we are, and the show's starting to pick up steam. Of course, the Trash Pandas people recognize Ricky and I at the game. If you poke your head out, they're like, "Oh, you do the radio show too." Yeah, so we're kind of earning it a little bit, but no, it doesn't frustrate me at all. I actually get really excited when you get a few people that know who you are. It's pretty cool. So.
Yeah. So that was the Dale Jackson show, right?
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah,
and that was a political show. Mm-hmm. And what were your responsibilities on that show?
I started out in radio. In order to get to where I am, you had to do a lot, right? Like you had to earn. I didn't have any kind of experience, so I had to earn my way up. And I started as essentially a paid intern. I'd just show up on the weekends and go to remotes and just kind of be a face and be out there and be a presence for your radio stations. I did it for ZYP. And then eventually in 2017, I started producing the Tom Abraham Show permanently on the Ump. He's now on our competition now. Still a really good friend of mine, but he's on the Zone, and he was doing it on our station at first, and I was his producer. And I wanted to be in radio, but I was working part-time, having to work 2 jobs. I lived in Florence, which is about an hour away.
Right.
And so I was driving here throughout the day to work his show and then going back and working at a Texas Roadhouse busting tables.
Yeah.
So an opportunity came up where Dale's producer, was quitting, and Tom had the suggestion. He said, see if you can produce his show and then produce my show in the afternoon and become full-time. And they bid on that idea, so I did that, and then some other things happened on the Ump where some shows got shifted around, and a guy who had a show that didn't have a show anymore wanted to produce Tom's show, and he was the PD of the station at the time, so they bumped me off the station completely, and Dale just absorbed me full-time over there on VNN, so I became his producer of his show, somewhat of a personality on his show, and I was also the assistant program director of WVNN. That was where most of my responsibilities were, off the air, behind the scenes and stuff.
So for someone that is interested in this as a career, and this is something I've mentioned with other guests, we've actually had so far, sports, 3 sports guests, golf, and then 2 for baseball. And then last week we had Morgan Vick from Activate Communications, which is kind of a marketing firm that Mantech is actually using to produce a video that we're going to show at a game that we are sponsoring for the Pandas. But this is a cyber-heavy community.
Oh, yeah.
And there's all this attention on the cyber school. And, Space Force might move here. There's like a final decision on whether or not that happens, right? And we know Huntsville has the most PhDs per capita than any other city in the country. So for someone who is interested, though, that's listening to this podcast, and man, I'm grateful that we've got a couple guys from the Ump and they're into broadcasting. What's some, tips that you would give to help, other than hard work, and just going after it, right, and doing everything you can? What are some of those skills or other things you would that you've learned that were helpful when, no matter what the topic area is, whether that's politics or sports or the arts, to kind of to make that splash and a contribution at a station?
What I learned when it was the hard way was just even if you don't have a platform like the radio, in order to, it's almost like a catch-22. You feel like you would be great there if they gave you an opportunity, but you need experience to get that opportunity, but you don't have any experience because they won't give you an opportunity. Create your own experience. So like, just put your presence out there, and you can record stuff a million different ways now, right?
Yeah.
So you have to do it while working something else, but there is a podcast out there right now that did such a great job at building from the floor up and just putting his presence out there on Twitter. You comment on other things on sports related, and then if people start liking your comment on popular people's Twitter accounts, post clips from your podcast underneath it. Like, just get your presence out there, and you don't have to. And the other thing that I always tried to do is I always wanted to be right, and I always wanted to have a really good opinion and just be as educated as possible on whatever I was talking about, which I still think is very valuable.
Right.
You don't have to, though. You have to get people to want to listen to you. If you're the kind of person that can just be outrageous to be outrageous, and there are those personalities out there, then do that. I don't have the possibility. I don't think I could do that even if I wanted to do that. And I'm glad I can't. I can't operate that way. But if you can, be that. And there is a platform out there for people and opportunities for people by just being who you are. But you have to let other people see who you are and put it out there as much as possible. I wish I had done that more when I was in college and stuff. I had valued more just like actually working and going through school rather than getting out and doing it when I wasn't working and going to school. And I wish I had. I learned that the hard way. If you're wanting to get in, put yourself out there.
So talk me through. I've always been, obviously I'm doing this kind of like you were just saying. I'm putting myself out there, right?
Absolutely.
I'm doing a podcast, and I've done similar things in the past. But talk me through the amount of preparation to go into a show. When you have I've always been very appreciative of those who have a daily show.
Yeah.
And particularly in morning drive, where their show starts at 5 and they're on for 5 hours, or they're on at 6 and they go to 10. Well, but it doesn't matter really what time it starts, although the concept of like trying to go to bed early and get up early must be really difficult, right? And I think that those people probably actually don't get as much sleep as you think. But how hard is that to get used to? Is it stressful still, or I feel you got into a groove, but like, because you have talent. I told Ricky, I was like, you sound like you are a play-by-play guy. You're a command guy. You run the show. This has got to be weird for you sitting on the other side of the mic and actually being interviewed. And I've been in that position as a play-by-play for my own sports stuff.
Sure.
But how stressful is it, or how much? Get some behind the scenes on what does it really look like to just prepare for a 3-hour radio show Monday through Friday?
It's a lot, and it's a lot, and I've kind of taken that on myself. I put that on myself because I have elected to have 2 co-hosts that I trust more than anything, that are hilarious and have great personalities and are extremely intelligent. The only problem is, they come in as part-time co-hosts, so they have to have other jobs. And Clint is very established in his job. Ricky's very established in his. So I understand they don't have the time to put into the radio show like I do. This is my job, right? I run the radio station and then I do the show. So I take on a lot of the prep work and just fill them in on what we're going to talk about and kind of let them react to it, right? So I knew that going in, and yes, it's unbelievably difficult to do. And it's another reason why I'm glad, especially this time of year, they don't have to do that, because I want them to stay with me as long as possible, right? So I'll take on that responsibility. It's very difficult because you have a million different things that you want to talk about compared to a million different things that might need to be talked about, and you don't want it to. You might want no more, be more interested in this, but you think your listeners will be more interested in this. Organization has helped me a lot. I've kind of very recently reorganized how I prep, reorganized how I prepare for the show, and get it ready to go, and almost make myself put everything in a priority list of what you're going to talk about, and understanding who you're also talking to and how long maybe we can talk together if it's all 3 of us. So sometimes you over prep And like Fair or Foul today on the show was Fair or Foul I wrote 2 days ago because we never got to it.
Right.
And then there are some days where you think you prepared a lot, and then there's just not enough substance there in the conversation that you kind of have to reach. So especially this kind of year, when you're not an analyst like that can break down film, and you're based more on entertaining, on and being a fan of reacting. It is really difficult this time of year. A lot of work goes into it, so it is always rewarding when you have a lot of people interacting. And lately we've had a lot more interaction. Like I said, I took over the station in December of 2019, right before 2020 happened. And every radio had a big falling out during 2020. No one was listening, and we essentially had to start over. And people that were on before I took over had been let go, so the listeners weren't happy about that, and that kind of falls on you. It's not my fault, but it is my fault to them, right? Because I'm the face that's there that is replacing those guys.
Right.
So even though they're not related, so there's just kind of building everything back up and trying to get the trust of the listeners and just be that presence. It's very rewarding because it feels like I feel like we're finally starting, even though we've been doing it for 2 years. So it's very difficult, but here lately it's been unbelievably rewarding. So
is it also just difficult there's just too many storylines, right?
Sometimes.
I know some, and I think you were touching on that, right? As far as what are the listeners going to want to hear, but you can't do it all. And I guess that can be a blessing in disguise if the story is still fresh. 2 or 3 days from now, you can go back to it. Otherwise, that's set sail.
Exactly. And the other thing that stinks is of course, being the program director, I listen to the station all day to make sure everything's working. And I listen to the other programs that we have on. And we have other Birmingham programs that are going to talk college football, similar topics that we want to talk about, not national stuff like the NBA and the NFL offseason all the time. And when I hear them, have a story that like I may have had my show prepped, and then all of a sudden they bring up a sports story that I didn't even have in the arsenal. You start to feel pressured, like, do I need to include that? Is that something like they've already talked about it? And then that's the other side of it too. They've already talked about it. Do I need to talk about it? Sure, I need to talk about it. It's a different time period, right? So there is a lot that goes into it. The more you think about it, the more you just constantly surround yourself with it. But it is unbelievably rewarding when you have great listeners. And the one thing about the Ump listeners, and it's always been this way, is they are unbelievably loyal. Like they if you eat something, they want to eat where you're eating. They want to know about it. Like they are very loyal. They are unbelievable.
That's awesome. If I could, I'm going to share with you an experience I had in 2006, I think it was.
Okay.
Because again, I didn't choose this as a career. I kind of wish I had, but I'm trying to. I enjoy it, right? I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but it's fun. It is a little easier to do podcasting, but at the same time, I try to do more of a professional setup, and hopefully people see that. But so for me, when I realized that I was interested in broadcasting, ESPN ran this thing, and I think it was Texas and Texas A&M football, and on ESPN 1, they had the game. With their, and I don't remember who the commentators were, but on ESPN 2, they ran a full production show of the production of the game. So they were just showing the producer and the guys in the truck and then the highlight reel and all this stuff, right? So it's frenetic pace. I mean, it's just hair on fire. And then there was that, but then they did a similar thing for SportsCenter, where they showed SportsCenter.
Wow.
And then they showed the leading up to SportsCenter, which started. So this was like the 11 o'clock Eastern. That's what I was used to. So 10 o'clock Central. You're going to go what is your story that you start with, but depending on what time of year it is. So this was, I believe it was like around October. So the Yankees at the time, I don't think they were in the World Series or the playoffs were going on. I don't think the NBA had started, but there were some compelling preseason games. Tiger was playing well before his injury, before he got clocked in the face with a 9-iron by his wife. And so I got so interested in how the producer and the director of the show are trying to figure out, what do we start with? What's our lead story at 11 o'clock? And some of those games weren't going to finish until about 10:58 Eastern time, or they may have run over. And so it's just up to the second, kind of like, what do we go with? There's 10 different things, and if those end up not being, if there's not a game winner, then what do you go with? But there is a game winner. then you go with that, right? And all these different like storylines and stuff, and it captivated me.
It's a really fun process, and you can always tell if you listen, and I can tell when I listen to other shows too, and I always kind of giggle to myself, and I won't point it out or anything because I get it. It's this time of year. You can always tell when people are reaching for content at this time of year, and you'll see local radio this time, especially sports radio this time of year when it's college baseball and then the NBA playoffs. Not anything super local. Like we're a heavy college football listening base, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
So when there's not live college football, the spring's wrapping up, you'll see people go for a lot of lists, like your favorite this, your favorite that. And we do that some because of the way the show is structured, and that's not the reaching topic. So when you have stuff like that, you'll see people make their list, their greatest this of all time and all that. That's common for this time of year. But then you'll just hear these off-the-wall topics that people really, really reach for. So if you listen enough this time of year, you can notice. And also this time of year, I also think that they and we do this as well, focus way more locally and everything to try to get, because, if you don't have any compelling stories, people still like to know what's going on around you. So
if it wasn't sports, would there be a different genre that you would be interested in?
In radio?
Yeah, in radio.
No. I've had this conversation a bunch with, originally, again, in 2018, I was taken off the sports show I was producing. And I was put on VNN full time, and I had part-time, or not part-time, but I had a weekend radio show on Saturdays. And I just had this assumption that I was eventually going to get back on the sports station and do something and be a part of the weekdays eventually in some capacity. And anytime there was like a hint that might not happen, and some pushing from the other side, like Dale Jackson originally, he wanted me to flip completely to news, and there were certain times when he wanted me to do a show at one point on WVNN, and I'm like, I have no interest in doing news talk radio. I don't pay enough attention to it. I'm not passionate enough about it. I don't have enough opinion about it. I have no interest in that. So if it wasn't sports radio, I think I'd want to do it. I'm too long-winded to do like music stations like
right.
ZYP, Top 40 station, or if you listen to like rock music, like the Rocket. I love the guys over there at the Rocket. Big fan of them. I can't do what they do because I'm too long-winded. I can't go that short of time and be effective like they are. There's an art to that too.
I remember Ricky in the episode, I asked him something at some point about like, what his type of, songs he likes. He's like, I worked at a Top 40 station. I don't really do music. I can't listen to the radio because I had enough.
Oh, man, that's funny because I'm a big radio guy. I worked in the same building. I mean, ZYP that he used to work on, so I hear the music in the halls and stuff all the time. I'm a huge music guy.
Yeah.
Love listening to music. So.
Because there's been times when you and again, I don't do this as a profession, but I do analyze things. And there's been shows where I could tell, well, there were certain hosts that did, let's say, just kind of a broad entertainment. Wasn't sports specific, was just anything. They kind of pull up the newspaper or the headlines, and they have the entertainment section. They got the business, whatever. And then the radio format changes, and they say, hey, we're going to do sports, and it's not the same. And it's so nice and it was refreshing when they kind of were able to be unleashed from that and go to their wheelhouse, or vice versa.
For sure.
And you can really tell when someone just is kind of faking it. And they're good on the radio, they got a good voice, but from a content perspective, right, or just being able to opine on whatever subject,
absolutely,
you really want them to be unleashed. And
in local radio, there's also such an importance on being able to connect. Like you hear on our station right now, you hear the Zach Gelb show before the Trash Panda game starts. You'll hear national CBS radio. They're there to give you information, to give their opinions, right? There's a weird balance with local radio. You're supposed to do that, right? They want to know that they can trust you and you know what's going on, you're smart on the topic, but at the same time, they want to know you since you live in their community.
Right.
So you really do, like sometimes you will hear hosts do topics that aren't sports related, and it's way more forgivable this time of year. I know I've said this time of year a bunch. It's way more forgivable right now. But some will over abuse that, and some that do that aren't just reaching for topics. They're just doing a really great job at getting their audience to know who they are, whether it be with music or other things. And I don't do that enough, but we try to do that in a way. That's why we're more on the goofy side and more of the fan side, because we might not talk about everyday stuff all the time. Fair or foul, sometimes we do that if we don't have sports topics in it, but we try to just give you who we are personality-wise in a natural sense of flowing into other things. that way instead of just being super analytical. That way we can let people know who we are and relate to us a little more, because you're way more relatable when they don't just think of you as the guy who hates Auburn or Alabama. That you're the guy who talks about sports, but you went to this restaurant last week and my wife's about to have a kid, so it's a really interesting balance with local that I had to learn, because I'd only really ever listened to national sports radio until I got down here, and I hear them really getting in with the community. It's a totally different thing. Like, you really connect better with your audience that way.
So I saw a tweet today, so I'm going to surprise you, because as you're the program director, and you probably know there's nothing that surprises you on your show, right? You've written the questions, you have the topics.
Yeah.
But I saw something because of your alma mater. So North Alabama tweeted, hey, where should we go look for the next best prospects? And Bob Jones had retweeted it, right? So let me ask you, how well do you know high school football, and how do you answer your alma mater's football program? Where should they go if they want to find the best recruiting class?
Well, so I have to cater to the North Alabama area. Obviously, I know that there's plenty of annual talent down closer to the Central Alabama. I get that.
Right.
High school football is something that is growing on me. The importance of knowing that around here as well. I in order to make myself get into high school football more, I've partnered with Way 31, who is our news partner on the station. I did it last year. It's their Friday night football show. I will go out and watch. I'll cover the rivalry game of the week. They'll send me out, and I'll watch that game. I'll have the coaches on during the week and stuff. So really starting to get more into that realm as well. It would be better if we could carry high school football on our station that way, but we can't, because the Trash Pandas go so deep into high school football season. The Pandas don't end until week 4 out of like week 8 or 10 of a high school football schedule. So I'm getting more into high school football, but of course, like the big 7A schools, Bob Jones, Sparkman's been a lot better under LeBron White, James Clemens, ever since they opened, they've been pretty good. They've got a quarterback that I love. Gio Lopez is the man. I love that guy. And then there are plenty of, out in Huntsville, you've got plenty of schools, but of course, Madison Academy is always going to be a popular one, because they're a smaller school, but they win all the time. So
let me do a plug real quick for Madison Academy, and then I want to come back to something. But so last week I ran the mud run. At Madison Academy. It was awesome. I've ran in Spartan races. I've done Ragnar, which is different, but like Spartan and some of those like Tough Mudder type things. Yeah. This was legit.
Oh yeah.
It was legit. I mean, there must have been at least 3/4 of a mile of just mud and water. And then we like went through these mud pits that literally were taking your shoes off. It felt like I was in quicksand at some point. Crossed the creek. I mean, it was so much fun. It's like 25 of the youth from church, and my 17-year-old went. And then I'm wearing the Trash Dash. That's this Saturday. The 5K over at the stadium.
Over at
I guess
Toyota
it's at the stadium. Yeah, Toyota Field. So I just picked up the packet today for this shirt.
I was wondering. I was like, you said you moved here in like December. I was like, did you get that the last year?
No, this is it.
Third one.
I just picked up this shirt today.
Very cool.
And I was like, I'm going to wear this today. I'm going to try hard. I don't know if my budget will allow it, but I'm going to try hard to wear a different T-shirt, right? Like every episode.
Sure.
So Vegas. How long were you in Vegas? I know you said you were born there.
Oh, man. Like 10 months.
Oh, that was
I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I went back and visited some family there when I was like 5 for a weekend. So
I mentioned that because high school football is amazing, where like on a Friday night, they're going to show you the best programs in the country, and it's as good as college football.
Sure.
And I went to see Bishop Gorman High School. They, at the time, this is 2017, 2016, they were the #1 team in the country. And their schedule, private school right there, and so they just demolished the schools in Vegas that they have to play. But their non-conference is they were only going to play an opponent that won their state championship. So they play California, they go to Florida. So in this case, we went out there. My buddy and I would go on golf trips, and we brought our sons because they were graduating high school. And he was from Hawaii. So Kahuku was coming from Hawaii to play them. And the entire Laia, that community like came to, and Bishop Gorman was blown away. They couldn't believe the visiting stands was full of Polynesians. And these are some scary looking people at times, right?
I bet their hockey dance is unbelievable.
Yeah,
that stuff is so cool.
And so we went on like a kind of a quasi golf trip, but then we also went to the game because he went to Kahuku High School. Oh, wow. Shout out to Todd Wettins, my boy.
That's crazy.
And Bishop Gorman demolished them, and it was like just unbelievable how good they were. Tate Martell was the QB. He went to Ohio State. I think he's transferred to try to go to Miami.
He's retired from football now.
Now he's retired
After transferring 3 times.
But it was to see, and it was it was a game of the week. We were there, and I hope that it would be awesome if one of our programs here could kind of get to that level of national, the best in Alabama.
Yeah, I mean you're gonna have that in Central Alabama right now. But,
really?
I mean you still get some really good talent come out of here. I mean, back when I first moved here, at Bob Jones, they had plenty of dudes. Every now and then. Again, Grissom out there. We get great baseball talent out in this area. The talent's here. It's just the better teams tend to be out there in Central. Hoover, always really good at football, right? Thompson, those schools. But as you mentioned, my alma mater, UNA, want to know where the talent is, they should go check with their legendary quarterback, Cody Gross, over at Athens. He's coaching Athens, and he won 2-3 national championships at UNA back in the 90s. So he's a legend.
In episode 1, I had Ricky retell the D.T. Shackelford story. Remember when he said he palmed him like a little baby?
Oh, yeah. He ran 5 yards. He ran the route. The whistle blew. He was same spot.
Yeah.
Didn't move. That's a great story. No one tells a story like Ricky either. Like he can really get you into it.
So let's talk about the baby you're about to have.
Okay.
I believe you said today is 8 months. She's 8 months today.
8 months today. That's right.
And she's your high school sweetheart, or
no? So we met in college.
Okay.
I date a whole bunch growing up. I mean, obviously was not by my choice. Obviously, growing up, I had to grow into what you see now, which. Trust me, it used to be worse. So if you're like, what are you talking about? This is the best I got. So when I moved here, I had a girlfriend that lived close to my dad's house where I moved in 2010, and we dated for like 3.5 years, and it didn't work out. And then we went to UNA. She left UNA, and I was there, and I met my wife. I remember, I'll never forget it. I'll never, ever forget it. And I tell her this all the time. It's one of the stories that she's probably tired of hearing by now, but my 2 best friends that live out this way, I kept a full-time job out this way too. So I would come back out here on the weekends and work and then go back out there. And I told them on my first day of school, they're like, you got to let us know if you have any, hot chicks in your class. It's college, you're going to UNA, girls from all over the state coming in. You got to let us know who's in your class. So I go to my first class, nothing. Second class, cute girl, friendly. Then my third class, I go in there, and before it starts, it's one of those almost like theater-like classes, right? That you see on TV.
Yeah.
It wasn't big or anything, but it was kind of built like that. And I remember walking in, it was almost like she was in the center of the room sitting down. And I remember walking in, seeing her sitting there. There were a couple other girls in there too. I saw her, and I turned around, walked right back out because you didn't get service in that room. And I texted them. I remember texting them and saying, there's a girl in here, like, you guys got to go to college, because there's a girl in here who's like, you this is the kind of girl you would marry right here. Like, that's what this is. So, you try to be slick. I go up and I sit like 2 rows back and like 2 chairs over, right? And then the class is getting ready to start. And like, nobody's sitting with her. I'll eventually try to get to know her. And then a dude comes in and sits right next to her. And I'm like, man, she's got a boyfriend and he's in a class with her. That sucks. And then me and him hit it off a couple classes later. Me and him were really good friends, started talking about football. He's a big Alabama fan. So we started talking about football. And I find out like a week in that they've just known each other since they were born. That's not even her boy. She has a boyfriend that doesn't go to school here. But they just are really close because they've known each other forever. And that guy ended up being a groomsman in our wedding. He's still a really good friend of mine. But so I ended up dating someone that I used to go to high school with. I would go and see her on the weekends, and she was going to MTSU at the time. And then the second semester, it was our first year at UNA, 2013, second semester, me and that girl split. And then a couple of months later, my wife and her boyfriend had split. And we had still like hung out, and there was nothing really there. We'd hung out together because, his name is Jordan at his apartment. We were friends. We were all friends. We got together. It wasn't just us 3. It was other people there. And then eventually, it worked out to where we got together, and we've been together ever since. So June of 2014 is when we got together. We've been together. We got married in 2017, October. And then now we're 8 months pregnant. So.
And you shared I caught some of your program today, and you shared you had a dream about what to name your boy came to you and said, you're going to name me this or something like that.
Yes.
Right?
It was weird because it was one of those things where he was an infant and he was talking, but it wasn't weird. Like, it was just a couple words here and there. Like, you like this? Yeah, I like that. Or this and that. And I told him what his name was, which we're not revealing to anybody yet.
Right.
And he was like, I like this name. And he said he liked the name Jackson. And I'm thinking, wow. I wake up, I put my alarm off a couple times because I just wanted to keep dreaming about him because he's so close to being here, but it's still like a month and a half away. So I finally wake up and I roll over to text my wife. I've got it typed out. I'm like, I know what we're naming him. I know we already have a name picked out, but we have to consider this one. We have to consider Jackson because he told me in a dream that's what he wanted to be named. And then I thought about it before I hit send. I was like, I can't do that. I can't do it. I'm going to tell her when I get home I can't do that. And it's because Dale Jackson from VNN that we talked about earlier, still a really good friend of mine. He keeps telling me, he keeps acting as if he's my dad. He tells me, he calls me, the world's greatest dad. We had to get him, I got him a world's greatest dad mug for Christmas a couple of years ago. He's only like, I don't know, 12 years older than me or something. He's not old enough to be my dad, but he thinks he's my dad. And he thinks this is his grandson. So he wants his grandson named after him. So I told my wife, there is no way in hell I'm ever letting him think that our kid is named after him. That will be held over my head forever. No shot. So I had to throw that out the window right away. I'm literally crushing my kids' dreams in my dreams already. So,
couple things. One, we almost named our son Jason Jackson. But to your point, even though you're not revealing the name because it's not until you do see the child that you can change your mind.
And that's exactly why even now we have an idea what we're going to name him. Like, there's clear front runner. We don't even reference him as that at the house. We just call him baby right now because my wife keeps saying, what if when he's born that he doesn't look like that?
Right.
So
did they do a 4-dimensional sonogram?
We did it like 2 weeks ago.
Man, those things are amazing. My oldest is 23, so the original sonogram, the first couple kids were like, 2-dimensional. Like, it was hard to even. What is that? But then by the time, it might have been until our fourth that there was a 4-dimensional, and I really felt like and when he came out, like, yep, he looks like his picture. It was like that good.
And I've been wondering if that was the case because when we got the 4D ultrasound, he looks like that's the lock screen on my phone right now. He did like a little smile on the 4D ultrasound. He looks just like my wife. Thank God for him. He looks just like my wife.
Yeah.
So, but you can so clearly see it. It's not just the features.
Right.
That you don't just see lips, nose, and all that stuff.
Right.
You can see who they resemble. It's insane. And you have to remind yourself that there's not a camera in there. They're doing this from the stomach, right? So it's like the sound waves bouncing off that are giving you what that is. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was just like, I couldn't believe how accurate it was.
It's crazy. So and that's the first thing I asked was, I asked people that got 4D ultrasounds done. I'm like, did you ever compare when they were born to see if they actually looked like that? Because we want to make sure it was worth going and doing. And surely enough, right now, I feel like it already is accurate because in that picture, I can see he looks just like my wife. So
I have a grandma. She died like 10 years ago, but my daughter's name was Alicia. Her name was Alice. And I don't remember where we came up with Alicia. We certainly weren't necessarily naming her after my grandma and using kind of the Spanish. But we had a really hard time with her. With the boys, we had no problem. We had the name picked out. For the most part, it stuck. But with her, I don't know. We just kind of had a Hail Mary at the end. Like, we got to call her something, kind of like time's running out.
Yeah.
And then what's her name going to be? Like, somehow we came up with Alicia. But my grandma does think we named her after her. And
not a bad thing to let her think that.
Yeah, just let her think it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So let's talk. So, I mean, I know that you mentioned some advice on the radio to your friend Tim, right, that just had a baby.
Yeah.
And your advice that you mentioned there was, make sure you sleep when the baby sleeps or something like that.
At least that's what I was told, yeah.
Yeah. So other good advice you're getting? Or what do you, or let's pause that. What are you most nervous about being a dad?
The thing that scares me the most, and it's one thing that we're not going to do, thankfully, because they told us not to do it. The thing that I was scared about before we ever had a baby was I'm such an active sleeper, like I roll around too much. I was afraid of crushing him when I slept. That was such an irrational fear for me. But now I think it's just like when he's here, you can do everything right, and something can still go wrong. Like since we've known we've been pregnant, I've had 3 people I know, 2 I went to high school with, 1 that's a friend of mine, and that have had their infants 3-4 months old just pass away.
Yeah.
And that is so terrifying. You can literally do everything right, and that can just happen. So I think I'm going to never sleep again until we get past the point of that being like a real thing.
Yeah.
And because I just want to monitor the fact that he's breathing all the time, because that's the thing that scares me the most. Terrifies me.
Here's my one piece of advice, and you may have already heard it. Keep to a schedule.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going out with your friends. Pat, like if the bedtime's 7, it's 7. And if Ricky wants you to come over, no, sorry, pal. I'll see you tomorrow. Like, don't do that.
I am a big organized guy. I'm organization all the way. My wife, not so much, but I think she will be with the baby. Like when it comes to bedtime and stuff, she goes to bed at the same time every night. So, which is a lot earlier than when I go to bed. But I'm a organized kind of person, so that shouldn't be a problem. At least that's what my mind will immediately go to, wanting to get on a fixed schedule. So,
all right, we're gonna do the quick 6 now.
Okay.
These are my 6 questions. You don't have to answer them quickly. It just sounds good.
Okay.
The quick 6. And I may have only written down 4. So we'll see. All right, you ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Tell me about your greatest broadcasting experience.
Oh, man. The first time ever doing the Trash Pandas comes to mind, being the PA guy, because I got that gig just knowing the guy who was doing the Trash Pandas and starting him here. I knew him, and he wanted to give me a shot because he knew I was passionate for it. I've never done any kind of PA ever before. Right. So getting that first opportunity for 2 years, knowing that I was going to be the PA guy for 2 years, practicing in my car, knowing who originally was supposed to throw the first pitch for the Trash Pandas, and that ended up not happening because of COVID, but practice saying his name. The pressure was.
Do you remember his name?
George W. Bush.
Oh, was
he was supposed to be the first pitch.
Wow.
Thrown at Toyota Field in 2020, but we ended up not having that season. So. So of course I would practice that, and I didn't know like how they literally have almost everything written out for you as a PA guy. So I was trying to think how I would want to word it and everything, just building up to that, and I think doing a pretty good job the first time out. That was pretty awesome. But I would say on the radio, there's some shows on the weekend that Ricky and I used to do that come to mind that stand out when you really feel like you weren't trying all that hard. Now, doing it on the weekdays 2 to 5 and kind of having to be a trusted voice instead of just being the fun weekend guy that's going to do a show to fill some time. It just, I don't know, it felt more natural that way. We didn't prep as much because it was 2 hours one day a week.
Right.
We'd come in with some topics and just throw them around. There were a couple days. I remember when Sam Darnold got mono, and me and Ricky did a thing on that, and it was I still get listeners that'll text me like, that was one of the funniest things we ever heard. That was great. So
a couple things. One, how did you get George W. Bush?
So the guy who originally helped start the Trash Pandas, who's not with the Trash Pandas anymore, he was a former PA guy in Major League Baseball. He also was a part of, I can't remember how high up he went, but he was part of the umpire thing. Like he was, I don't know if it was a union at the time or whatever, but he was an official, and he knew George Bush through all that. So he said he had him ready to go, but then we ended up getting canceled because of COVID. So that's what we were always told behind the scenes. There was going to be George W. for the first pitch. So.
Yeah, my first thought was like, I know he used to be tied to the Rangers back in the day, but
I believe that the guy that was doing it, and he's told the story a bunch before, but he was, I believe, part of that game the night George threw the or maybe George had told him the story when he threw the first pitch after 9/11.
That's right. Man, I still remember that. And here's the other thing about public address, because that's kind of how I started when you were talking earlier about creating your opportunity. I grew up playing football and baseball and basketball and stuff like that. And in my football experience, there was never a field where we had like a public address. But then when I start having kids, my oldest, we used like this baseball field. And they put the football field out like in the outfield, that type of thing. But they actually had a PA system, and so they would just ask parents, "Hey, who wants to volunteer to do the game?" And I'm like, "I'll do it." And then actually sign me up for all of them because I enjoyed it. But it irritates me and it frustrates me so much. Like there's rules of the road. If you're doing public address, there's rules for when you say what you say and when you're going to be quiet.
Oh yeah,
if you're doing play-by-play, there's rules. And and then the color guy needs to respect the play-by-play. Like there's a period of time he needs to finish describing what just happened. Then the color guy takes over, or gal, and then he stops talking so the play-by-play can set up the next play. But man, and there's so many people that are just violating that.
Oh yeah, it's
where
not
they're
organized.
It's like a youth football game, and the PA is acting as if it's play-by-play. Like, just shut up already.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the kind of the formality, right, of public address that you learned.
For sure, yeah. Like getting in there and knowing that there are people in there with you, and it's not your show; you're their mouthpiece, and they have things that you have to say. The organization has things that they have to say, and the people that put on stuff in between innings, they have things they have to say, and here's what they want you to say. You just have to be the guy to say it. And then there are times where you can put your own spin on things, and that's why I try to make it as much fun as possible when I announce all the batters, because that's my time, and it's our team, and and last year it kind of took off with one specific player, Ebendel Isabel. The way I said his name was it caught on like wildfire, and it was fun. I want that for every player, and I keep throughout the season try to find that thing. It's a small thing, and it's not a vanity thing. I don't want to be the guy that everybody knows when they go to the ballpark. I want every one of those players to feel like, that I am singling them out individually, and that it's not about one dude. It's not the best hitter on the team. It's really about the name and what I can do with it. So I try to make the name announcing as much fun as possible, give it as much juice and everything else, because I want them all to love. I want each and every one of those players to love that. So
how cool! I know the Pandas are away this week.
Yeah.
But last week was opening week. I want you to talk about that in a little bit. But Victor Mesa from the Blue Wahoos. And what a cool name.
That gets even crazier if you. So I was told to look up his family. So and if I remember this correctly, the Blue Wahoos, they're on the farm system for the Marlins. They're the minor league for the Marlins. And Victor Mesa is Victor's dad. I believe Victor's the older brother. So it's Victor Mesa, the dad, Victor, the oldest son, and then the younger son, who's in high A baseball right now for the Marlins. Same system as his brother. They could eventually be on the same team. He's Victor Mesa Jr. So it's Victor, and Victor Jr. It's nuts. Nuts.
It's like George Foreman, where they're all middle name George or something.
They're all George. They're all George. I always I kept telling everyone over there at the field that they should do what they did on Friends. There was a guy named Phoebe's brother was Frank Jr.
Right.
And he named his son Frank Jr. Jr. It'll just be Victor Jr. Jr. Let's just do that.
So, you know Dikembe Mutombo?
Mm-hmm.
I went to...
Finger wag.
Yeah, the finger wag. Yeah. His family... I went to school with his nephew named Columbo. And his older brother was Lutiki, and he had an older brother named Kubi and an older brotber named Bukasa. But I just loved how they kind of...
Those are all awesome.
They went Bukasa, Kubi, Lutiki, and then it was like, well... Let's just go Columbo. With a K. Kalombo. You got a full ride to Kansas to play football.
Well, it's similar like Manute Bol, the basketball player. Yeah. He has a brother, Bol.
Yeah, so, same thing.
Crazy.
And who knows? Maybe there's something if he's the fourth child of the fourth son. But
yeah, it could be worse. I mean, it could be a lot worse than just repeating first and middle name, because you got names in sports. Remember looking this up a couple years ago. You want to find the craziest names.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech had a guy named Immaculate Perfection Williams, and LSU. I don't remember where he committed now. He was committed to LSU for a while, then he decommitted because of the coaching change. But his name was the coldest to ever do it. Was his first name?
That was his name.
The coldest to ever do it. Crawford is his name.
Wow. I know for religious leaders, religious reasons, there was that basketball player probably before you were born. His name was God Shamgod.
God Shamgod. Yeah, he was
what was his? I can't remember his real name.
I only know him as God Shamgod. He was the street basketball player.
Yeah,
he was awesome.
Yeah,
that was probably elementary school, my childhood there. Everyone putting the ball in their shirt, smacking it around, come out the front, all that. Yeah, that was good stuff.
Okay, give me a sports story. I'm trying to get away from what's the favorites, because I actually it would be unfair. I have too many things. Like I can't come up with a favorite. If you ask me, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite this? What's your favorite that? Give me a good sports story from your career.
Sports story from my career, like calling a game or something?
No, playing. You played sports growing up?
Yeah, I did play sports growing up.
We didn't kind of cover that yet. What were your major sports you played?
So baseball mainly, and I played it right up until high school, and then I ended up joining the drumline, and drumline was very, very good in high school. We won a couple state championships, and they do something in the winter called Winter Drumline. And you compete nationally. We got fourth in the country my senior year. So I did that, but I played baseball growing up, played basketball in high school. I liked it, but I wasn't good enough to make the team. I tried. Right. But I would say probably, and I don't have cool stuff like Ricky because he played high school football, and Clint at Athens played high school football. But I always remember my first home run I hit in Little League because that was the year where I actually became pretty good at baseball. Like there were always those kids around that the bad ones, the average ones was where I fit in, and then the really good ones. And that year I was as good as all the really good ones, and I was around the same way all the way up until the start of high school. So I remember hitting my first home run on that team. First year I made the All-Stars. I smacked that ball so hard that I couldn't see where it went because my helmet had fallen over my eyes. I hit it so hard, my helmet fell over my eyes. So I made contact, and all I heard was run, 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 run. So I'm running to first base, and then by that point, I get it over my head. I'm looking for the ball. I can't see it, and the parents are cheering. I have no idea I just hit a home run. But I hit it so hard and so far. It was actually inside the park because it wasn't really set up Little League for us. I was probably 11 or 12. It wasn't a short enough fence. Mm-hmm. So I hit it far enough for it to stick into the fence. It got stuck into the fence.
Gotcha.
So they're waving me home. I slide into home. The ball's nowhere close because I didn't know I hit it that far. And I got there, and I always remember that. And then for whatever reason, first time I got hit by a pitch in kid pitch. I got hit. That was probably 50 miles an hour right here on the cheek. Like, smacked me right there. I watched it come. I don't know why I didn't get out of the way. I like to think I have good reflexes, but I watched it hit me right in the face. Got up. Obviously, you're oh, am I okay? Make sure you're not bleeding. Yeah. You get to first base. I ended up being the game-winning run that game because I took one to the face. I made it all the way to third, and they hit me in. And we won, so my coach bought me a Coke after the game. Like, hey, thanks for taking one for the team, I guess. So that one always sticks out. And then the first home run, of course. You always remember your first
Did you
home
make
run.
Sure to not cry?
Yeah, 100%. 100% I made
even if you want to cry, you can't.
I think as a kid, the thing is, like, when you get hurt or take damage or whatever, the tears will come when you think you're really injured, like if you're bleeding or something.
Yeah.
And I think once I realized, I'm like, oh God. And then they pick me up. And I'm like, am I all right? And then I touch my face and I realize there's no blood. I'm like, okay, I'm not hurt that bad then. I'm not that. So 100% you're aware that you're not going to cry. When that happened, I was a little younger. I was like 10 years old. I'm not going to cry in front of my friends. No way.
No way, man. Do anything to hold back the tears.
Absolutely. And made sure like the coaches were standing in front of the dugout, so just in case they couldn't see my face.
Yeah.
It was dark. So, I'm not going to let them see me cry.
I had a really hard time transitioning from like Little League, 12 years old. I went out on top. Mm-hmm. I struggled moving into the big diamond and the next level.
Oh, yeah.
I was terrible as a 13-year-old. But then when I was 14, I was lifting weights and I was back to like being good at baseball again. But I was worried.
Yeah.
In that transition.
So for me, it was adjusting at the plate. Like eventually I learned how to hit well enough, and that took a little time. I'm a lefty, and my dad's a righty, so he could hit both sides. That's about the only really good left-handed thing he could teach me how to do. Mm-hmm. Eventually my bat caught up when I was like 11 or 12, but I was always great in the field. Like I an incredible fielder, just naturally, getting under the ball at a really young age and catching it, not being afraid of it, and trying to, catch it over here because of my dad. He was at a very young age. It was very much, I'm going to hit this ball and you're going to stand under it. And it's either going to hit you or you're going to catch it. And that's how it was my entire life. Maybe not be the best way to do it,
right?
But that's how it was. And you couldn't really display that when you were really, really young because not everybody can hit it to you. So, but I was always really great in the field. So I love my opportunities getting to show that. And I made some, again, Little League, but made some really cool plays that way. And then finally learned how to hit a little bit. So
I remember now why I didn't write down 6 questions, because I was hoping that in some of these answers, it would prompt the question. So I'm glad that baseball was one of your favorite sports. So what's going to be your walk-up song? If you had a chance to, let's say you're going to play in a charity softball game, maybe it's the Pandas staff versus whomever, and you and Clint and Ricky or whatever get to team up, but you also get to choose a walk-up song.
This would be a lot cooler if a Trash Panda player didn't use it last year.
Oh, yeah?
Because he has a last name that has Mac in it like me, but Return of the Mac.
Okay.
Return of the Mac was the first one that popped in my head, but David McKinnon, who's now with Salt Lake and AAA, first baseman, he uses that. So kind of takes a little bit of the luster off. But now that I'm a dad, I guess I could go with Crisscross. I can go with Jump, because they say Mac Dad will make you jump, or Daddy Mac can go with either one of those. So
wear your pants backwards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Man, that's a... Man, how long ago was that? Was that 90s?
That was before me, I think, or when I was really, really young. But I grew up on that stuff because my mom had all of us when she was young. So, we still got the that side of it from her. So
Yeah.
80s hairband music. Like, so my mom grew up on like the 80s hairband stuff. So like Poison and Bon Jovi, that I love that stuff from her side. And then my dad was Metallica, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. So I love all that kind of stuff.
Did he have the jeans jacket with the, they used to have like a patch or a big flag on the back.
My dad had a jean jacket, but I don't think it had a patch on the back. But he didn't dress the rock part.
Yeah.
But he definitely lived it for sure.
It's certainly interesting.
Lives? Yeah, he's still alive. I mean, he still lives it.
Yeah.
Oh, I said it like he was dead.
It's certainly interesting for me, like being in my mid 40s, and I'm kind of stuck in the 80s or 90s, and it's just kind of when I grew up. And I have a hard time remembering music like kind of past 2000. I remember stuff, but not like it was just so a part of growing up. But now with the internet and YouTube and movies will come up and feature a song, like a Journey song or something from way back, and it seems it's just so timeless now, where people now they can like music from any era.
There are movies that I like just like them so much more. The atmosphere of the movie is just so much better because of the soundtrack. And
Right.
80s soundtracks are that way. Like one of my favorite comedies is Hot Tub Time Machine. It's a really dumb movie, but it's about going back in time to the 80s, a time period that I'm very fascinated with.
Yeah.
And it's all hairband music in it, and I think that makes it so much better. So much better. So
What's kind of from a pop culture standpoint? What's a kind of a favorite memory or something that kind of really stands out to you?
something that I brought up a bunch, and since it's been 6 years since he passed away, I remember the first time we really got to watch the halftime show.
Okay.
When I was younger. I remember, so most of the time, again, stepdad was pretty strict and didn't like, and the halftime show was always usually something current, and he didn't really care for that. So we would always change the channel at halftime of the Super Bowl. We'd go like to the news or something. So I found out at school the next day that Janet Jackson was topless. I didn't get to see it because, we
Right.
changed the channel. So my freshman year in high school, during halftime, they just kind of got up and left, and I watched the rest of the game. It was that was Chicago, Indianapolis. That was Peyton's first Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Prince doing the halftime show, and I was 14, 15 years old. I didn't know much about Prince then, right? I knew who he was. I knew he turned his name into a symbol. I knew all that stuff, but I didn't really know too much about Prince. And I remember watching that halftime show and playing. He played other people's songs too. He played like I don't know why I can't think of their name all of a sudden. Dave Grohl's band. I can't think of their name.
Foo Fighters?
Foo Fighters. He played a Foo Fighters song. He played some of his songs. And then he got to Purple Rain. And I just remember the part I remember the most before I've gone back and watched it a million times was the guitar solo. They throw up this big white sheet that's really tall so you can see his shadow in it.
Yep.
And he's shredding the guitar solo to Purple Rain in the pouring rain. And that has always stood out to me. I always remember like that. Now I'm not missing out on a halftime show anymore. And Is it always like this? Are they always as good? Turns out they're not always that good. But I'm like, are they always as good? Because that was unbelievable. That's what I remember the most from that game. I don't remember. I hardly remember Devin Hester taking the opening kickoff for a touchdown. I remember Prince and the halftime show. So the halftime show has always kind of been important to me since then because I felt like I was missing out on something, and I got to watch something I was missing out on, and it turned out to be amazing. So
it's the Will Smith thing recently with Chris Rock. That kind of was just as shocking as the Janet Jackson moment where you're like, did that just happen?
Yeah.
Is this,
oh my God.
Is this a setup? Is this real? Was that an accident? Like kind of an interesting parallel there.
That whole thing was nuts. And then the both sides of it that you get, like Will was right. No, Chris was right. And all that. That was insane.
Or was it a big setup for,
right. Like a wrestling thing
like,
or whatever.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Pandas.
Okay.
I want to make sure we give, proper time, right, to them. We've talked about, your program director at Cumulus and the stuff you have going on there. Go back and remind me how you got the job. You said that it was handed to you. You'd never done public address, but how did that come to be?
So when they first announced that the Trash Pandas, well, not the Trash Pandas, but that we were bringing minor league baseball back here.
Right.
It was probably early 2018, late 2017. And I was producing for a different sports show at the time, and he was like, I want somebody on with the Trash Pandas, or someone on with the new baseball team that's coming. And I said, all right. So I found out the name of the company was Ball Corps, and I contacted them, and they're like, we'll give you the guy. And his name was Ralph Nelson, and he's not with the Trash Pandas anymore, but we built that relationship there. So when it officially they actually moved out to this area and started, they wanted to buy advertising with us and come on our shows. And then I was on the Dale Jackson show at the time. And me and Dale were good friends, and Dale knew how much I wanted to get in with them. He got in good with Ralph, and we would go out to eat, and he would talk about the involvement that I would want to be in there. I'm like, I want to be the PA guy. I want to do that. And he was like, he didn't care that I have any experience. He knew that I was passionate about it, and he was a PA guy himself, and he had heard me enough on the radio, and he was nice enough to without any experience say, sure, you can have it. So it completely fell in my lap, and it is not lost on me how lucky I am, and other people that have experience doing it that didn't get the opportunity to like audition for it or anything. I completely understand that. And how lucky and blessed I am. And that's another reason why I really try my hardest when I'm there.
So what time do you have to show up for a 6:35 pitch?
So that's tough to say, like what time we have to show up, because the Trash Pandas are, obviously, I work for them. I don't have time to leave the studio after my show and get there for a home game. So we do our show during home weeks from there. So I get there like 10:30, 11 o'clock every day. But I would say right after my show is a good sweet spot. 5 o'clock, I get over there, I fill out my script, all the blanks on the script, like who's going to be competing in this and that. And then it gives me a couple minutes to sit down and eat. And then we get started doing the PA probably about 40, 45 minutes sometimes before first pitch. So for a 6:35 game, 5:50, we're talking to the crowd.
I didn't realize that, because I was going to comment that it's got to be difficult to do a radio show when you're in Athens, Ricky's at the stadium, Clint's down in Birmingham or on location. Must be nice, though, to be with Ricky, right? I guess you guys are together in the press box.
Makes it so much. Yeah, we do it right next to each other. Makes it so much easier. And what brings it all together is the fact that we kind of double dip. I work for them, and then they also, the Ump is the home of the Rock City Trash Pandas. So they're already connected to our radio station. Right. All the equipment there to be connected for Josh to do the games, we just hop in and do it. Like we have our own to own equipment we could set up if we needed to, but they're already set up for it. So we do it, and I have Josh's equipment set up for him, and then that way when I get out, he can come in and hop right in. It's a perfect marriage.
That's awesome. How is it different? So right now it's an off week, but what are you doing from a public address standpoint? What are you doing to prepare for when they come back for their next homestand?
So right now, there's really nothing for me. It's always like the day of. The earlier I can get information when I'm there, the better. Because for me, it's just making sure I can pronounce everybody's names, right? You get the group sheet when you have to do the groups in the middle of at the end of the first inning, when you have to announce the national anthem performers and the kids that are going to be out there with the dream team, with the players, all that. Just any name that I have to say, just getting with whoever wrote it down, making sure I know how to pronounce it, because again, this is a message that I'm the mouthpiece. The people there, or the people hearing it, the people above me, the Trash Pandas, or whoever is paying for it, for their message to be put out there. It's their message. I'm the mouthpiece for that message, and I just want to make sure I get it right. So number one, I keep my job, and number two, so people like it.
It was quite the opening week. 6 game stands in minor league. I'm sure everyone's kind of enjoying this. The team is still, Josh is down on the road and following them right as they play now. But for everyone else, it must be kind of a nice, all right, cool. We've got a few days, a week, if you will, to recharge.
I can't speak for the front office because like Ricky's full time there. I know he's probably got more going on, but for me, it's great because after work, after the radio, I get to go home.
Yeah.
And I can go to the gym, or I can just go home. And during the home weeks, I have to get up, go to the gym in the morning. Then I go to work, and then I don't get home till 10:30, depending on how long. Last year, sometimes we didn't get home till 11. Sometimes we had really long games last year. So far, knock on wood or whatever, I don't think we've had, at least at home, we haven't had a game go longer than 3 hours yet, which is great.
Right. There was a article about minor league baseball, right, with the time savings right now with the pitch clock. I just saw that I guess it's at least 20 minutes shorter each game on average.
Which is crazy, too, because the pitch clock's kind of a suggestion. I mean, it's there, and they'll use it if they have to. I don't think they used it till the end of the year last year. Like, they used the clock, but I don't think they penalized a pitcher midway through the year last year at home. And then this year, they've said they're going to put more of an emphasis on making sure that you're pitching by the time that runs up. But even last year, like the pitch clock would run out within a couple seconds. They're throwing the pitch or winding up. So just the presence of it there without even having to enforce it, it's been effective.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm trying to remember. It's 14 seconds if there's no one on base, 18 seconds if there's people on base.
Correct.
And then what would be the penalty if they did assess a penalty?
It's a ball.
Just a ball. Okay. So that could lead to putting someone on base. Okay. I asked Morgan this last week because she's in marketing and promotion and all that, but and I'm glad you mentioned a routine of working out in the gym. Is that when your mind is most creative? Do you use that time when you exercise to just kind of think about things and try to do some brainstorming or idea creation for your programs?
Not on purpose, but yes. And that's one of the reasons why, getting into this routine has been great. I've finally started going, I'm sure if you can see, routinely to the gym just the last month or so. I haven't been going a long time, but yeah, like I don't go in there with the purpose of let me lift these weights so I can think about the show. It just kind of organically happens.
Sure.
Like, so we've structured the show like Monday is Champs and Chumps Monday. You react to the weekend. You got winners and losers, but you call them Champs and Chumps. It's fun.
Yeah.
Tuesday is Trivia Tuesday. You come up with trivia stuff relative to what's going on. And then Wednesday's What If Wednesday. You explore something in sports that, you wonder what if it happened differently. Right? And I have gotten most of the really good ones that we've done so far from just, shutting my brain off and letting it happen organically. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier on the weekends when it was just more fun because I put more pressure on myself now having to think about it all the time. When you don't think about it all the time, you come up with some cool stuff.
Yeah.
So,
up in Virginia, I used to listen to the Sports Junkies. And it's crazy because you guys it's interesting where they started in the late 90s and they were in their 20s. And then they're still on. So it's like, and you watch them have kids. Yeah. And now their kids are like going to college, and you kind of grow up with them in a way, right? And I won so many things calling in because they had trivia, and they had something called Donkeys of the Week where you just somebody did something stupid or whatever, and it's kind of a part of a life, right? Like you're saying, you have really good fans and really good followers, and I think moving here. Someone was like, well, what sports, or what stations do they have? I was like, I don't know. I'm starting from scratch. Yeah. And literally, I think I've landed on the Ump, and I don't have any reason to check anything else. Like, I'm good.
So the crazy part about that being a 30-year-old in radio is that you feel when you're outside of radio, you don't know how to feel. You don't know if you're old or not, right? Because you're not in your 20s anymore.
Right.
But in radio, you're young. Like I've been doing a full-time radio show for 2 years. I've been in radio for almost 6.
Right.
And I'm still young to the radio people because like some people don't hit like peak popularity in radio until like their late 40s, 50s, right? And then they do it for 20 years until they're 70, right? So being able to start now has its ups and downs. Like obviously you're speaking to an older demographic at first. We've done a good job at I think younger people flocking to the show around our age, and we still keep a lot of those older guys, but they don't want to feel like they're being preached to by younger kids. And then also when you get goofy and stuff, they can't relate because they're older. So that has definitely been a challenge. But the longer you're here and established, they'll tune in and you'll find a way. Like whenever they weigh in, and that's why I like when people text and call because I can talk to you and relate to you. Even though I'm being goofy right now, I can make this fun for you too if I just know specifically who I'm talking to. So when you call or you text, I can cater it to you.
Right.
So that's been really interesting and not knowing how to feel. Am I old or am I young? Because I'm 30. So, but I keep getting called like a kid and stuff in radio because in radio, 30 is really young. Yeah. But in life, it's not old, but it's not young. So it's really weird. It's very weird.
As we close up, give me an idea of some of the broadcasters that you would are emulating or you looked up to, idolized. Kind of just, I have my like Brad Nessler. I love that guy in college football. Certainly with Keith Jackson was great. Mike Tirico, I enjoy, like, he's kind of like a Dan Hicks where you can kind of give him anything. And I understand he knew nothing about golf. Yeah. And he just poured into learning everything he can. And now, they gave him a huge spot on the Masters and he was in the Olympics. And, like, is that something that you've had broadcasters where you kind of idolize, or
if I were ever to get in the play-by-play game or something like that, yeah, I mean, plenty. Brent, growing up, Brent Musburger, just being able to paint the picture of what you're looking at, and then some Auburn fans will like to hear this, but I think Eli Gold is tremendous doing Alabama stuff. Kirk Herbstreit on the analytics side and being able to be, because it's different. Like if you're a play-by-play guy, you don't necessarily have to know the most about football or whatever sport you're calling.
Yeah.
You have to know the basics and what's happening and explain it. You're a professional explainer of what's happening. But as a color commentator, you're analyzing the game in real time. So you not only have to know it really, really well, you have to be able to adjust on the fly. And Kirk is the best at that.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to. I guess I was kind of going down that road. It even could be radio, right?
Sure.
Or even I guess nowadays you got podcasters.
Right. Well, what I was going to say is like getting into the sports radio side of it, like being an actual just a talk show host. Other than locally, no, I don't. I don't have any like national person I've listened to and like I really want to be like that guy. I really want to listen to that guy because I just feel like, and not that we're like breaking ground in radio and doing something wildly different, but we are different. We like to be goofier. And I don't want to look up to and try to be more like a national host because this is local radio. It's a lot different. We explained that earlier. It's a weird balance. So the things I've learned like behind the scenes and certain things about local radio, Dale Jackson's been huge. I don't do Dale's style for sure because he's he's the loud, boisterous, just piss everyone off kind of person. And so the two that I've learned from the most would be Dale. And then even though he's a competitor now, he's on the zone. But Tom Abraham, he was the one who like reached out to me first and wanted me to be his producer and everything. So I learned a lot. Like that's hearing someone who has national radio talent do local radio like he does. I learned quite a bit from him, like some of the theme shows and I don't want to say I took that from him because I didn't. What I took was the idea that Dale and Tom taught me that everything in radio is stolen. Yeah. Everything. It is. Right. You hardly are ever going to find an original idea. Somebody somewhere has done it. You just have to come up with your own spin on it.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. That's why I said Champs and Chumps Mondays. People do Winners and Losers, Reaction Monday.
Of course.
That's what it is. It's just Champs and Chumps. You just kind of fit it to yourself. So they kind of taught me the business and from both of them in their own way, being as entertaining as they are, because the other thing was just I wanted to know all the information and I want to be the smartest person in the room and tell you what was happening so you would like me. But that's not what it's about. It's about being entertaining and being relatable, and those two taught me so much about that.
I think there's really good karma when you can acknowledge the competition, and be I'm as competitive as anybody.
Yeah,
and I want some of my people that we go against to lose, whether it's in whatever,
sure,
business or sports. But at the same time, it makes you feel good though when you can be like, you know what, hats off.
Well, it's because they're great too. Like I said, Tom, me and him have stayed friends through all this. Like they do Huntsville Havoc games. They have like the radio rights to the Huntsville Havoc games. Sometimes he'll call them, and I've filled in for the on ice arena guy, Freak Daddy, a couple times. Me and Ricky kind of filling for him. And I'll go up and talk to him and catch up with him. Still a great friend of mine. I look up to him a ton.
Yeah.
And then the other guys over there on the station that I didn't really get to know until the last year, they listen to the show. They tune in sometimes. And I don't ever be like, oh, hey, the competitor's listening. Here's such and such that's weighing into my show. But they do, and that's cool. Like they've made me feel welcome, right? So I don't have it. Like, yes, they're competition because they are the other sports radio station. But they don't act like competition because they're very friendly. Every one of them that I've interacted with, there's only, I think the owner of the radio station is the only one I haven't met, but they've all been awesome. So,
any shout outs as we close up here?
I think I've covered everyone, right? Like I've talked about Ricky. Funny story about Ricky, by the way. And I guess I close by telling how him and Clint both became co-hosts of the show at different points, because this is the first time we've been co-hosts all three together since I think this past January when Clint came back. So originally I was doing a podcast when I was in college with a friend of mine. His name's Aaron Triplett. He's now the tennis coach at Boaz Middle School. And me and him, we would record it. I worked at the radio station, so I could record it from the radio station. I'd get him on Skype or something. And then eventually I asked the program director on the Ump at the time, I was like, is there any way we can put our podcast on the radio station on the weekend or something? And the program director at the time was doing his own Saturday radio show. He was like, you can just have my radio slot. My 2-hour, 9 to 11 on Saturdays, you can have it. So it was called TonyMac the Triplet. Yeah. Me and him would do that show together. He would drive in from, he was living in Arab at the time. He would drive in, or not Arab, I think even farther back than that. Maybe he was living in Boaz. He was driving all the way from Boaz to do that radio show on a Saturday. And eventually he was, he got a full-time teaching gig and was coaching. He's like, I can't do that anymore. So I just started doing the TonyMac show by myself. And when I first started that, I wanted to co-host. And I reached out to Ricky. And I said, we weren't like best friends. We knew each other. We were in the same building. He was typically at a different time slot. So I'd pass him. We were very friendly with each other. I was like, hey, would you like to come on Saturday mornings and co-host a sports show with me? And he was asking if it paid anything extra, which it didn't, and all this. And he was like, well, I really just don't have the time for that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'll just do it by myself. And then eventually, probably about 6 months before everything happened and I took over in December of 2019, he all of a sudden had a change of heart and was like, I do want to do a sports show. And I think new management at Cumulus, or at least locally, gave him a little incentive to do it. But he had reached out to them and like, I would like to do the sports show. I just want a little extra. And we started doing the show together. And I think one of the reasons we became the friends that we are now, really quickly, compared to like barely talking to each other to being pretty good friends, I think we realized on air, we've got great chemistry together. Yeah. Very natural, great chemistry. Like I, for whatever reason, just so naturally know how to work off of him and feed off of his how funny he is. I can rope him in when I need to and knows when he's going a little off the edges, which barely ever happens. And he knows how to work with me. And it's great. And then, when right around the same time I was taking over the radio station, the Trash Pandas offered him full time over there. And they were like, look, I know that you're working radio and doing this too, but we'll give you whatever we need to bring you over here. And they did that. And he was like, so I can't do the show anymore. I was like, okay, fine. So I'm getting ready to take over. And the people that are already there that stayed on the show after me, we're getting ready to take another job somewhere else. And I remember Clint was a great guest. I can't remember where he was writing at the time. He's been everywhere now, but he covering Alabama. I always loved getting him on as a guest because I could ask him a question and he'd give me a 4-minute answer.
Sure.
Great for me.
Right.
So I remember reaching out to him, and I thought that taking a part-time radio job would be beneath him. So I was like, do you know anybody that writes for you or that you write with that would be willing to, do a radio show with me? He was like, well, I'm interested in it. So he started doing the show with me, and we did it for almost a year together, all through 2020. He made it almost, I think he maybe made it, yeah, he did. He made it into 2021, probably February of 2021, and he was writing for Outkick at the time. He was writing for the Roll Tidewire, managing editor of the Roll Tidewire, doing all these other things. It got too much, so he had to drop the radio. And then right when he told me that, we had already had plans to bring Ricky back. Ricky was in a place where he could come back and be my co-host. And so it worked out to where right when Clint left, Ricky was there. He wasn't supposed to replace Clint. It was supposed to be all three of us together. And then Clint, towards the end of football season, was like, well, now he's only doing one thing. He's working for this new thing called On 3 Sports.
Gotcha.
And he was in a position where he could come back. So we put the band back together, had a 3-person team starting this past January. But yeah, it all started with Ricky didn't want to be my co-host. And now he's my co-host. We work together with the Pandas. Great friend. So it's crazy.
That's awesome. Well, let's close with this. Let's go back to the internet.
Okay.
With your baby,
Okay.
unknown, let's see. Oh, I got to do this. I've looked at your registry and
Okay.
I am going to send you I want the Rompers. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to do the 3-pack of the Rompers because it's such a cool name. But if you're interested in TonyMac baby registry, actually, I just typed in your name, Antonio MacBeath, and baby registry or something like that, and
That's right.
came up.
We're registered on Amazon, my wife's favorite place in the entire world. So I appreciate that. That's incredible. Thank you.
I don't have enough T-shirts yet to hand out Our Town Podcast T-shirts, but they're coming.
I didn't think about it. I should have brought you an Sport T-shirt today. I have them sitting
all
in my
right.
studio and didn't think about it. So,
That's all right.
you coming to a Trash Panda game? I'll hook you up.
I went to 2 the first week.
Okay.
But it's funny, both of them, one was the day it got rained out, but 7.
Wednesday.
Yeah, we got through 7 innings, and then we went back Friday with the fireworks, which was awesome, and started to rain at the end. Like, why is it every time we leave a game, it's raining? But I'm coming the 29th, and they're the 30th. There's some time in May. We're doing our game.
We got back-to-back homestands right now. So starting Tuesday, 12 games in 13 days at home. So
I'm trying to
let me know what day you're coming. I'll get you a T-shirt.
That's
I've got
fine.
plenty of them sitting in the studio.
Cool. Yeah, I'll get you one, and I owe Ricky an Our Town Podcast T-shirt as well.
Okay.
But and then I was going to say something else about that, but whatever. Hey, I want to have you back on in the show in the future.
Anytime, man. This has
right.
been awesome. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you coming. Help spread the word.
Absolutely.
Some people are like, well, you got to be careful because I got it on Apple, I've got it on Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Anchor, audio-wise. Spotify, we have video. YouTube, we have video. And some people are like, well, you got to be careful. You can't say like and ring the bell. Like, look, just spread the word. People know what to
Absolutely.
do, right? If they like it, they'll hopefully find it on a format that suits them. But I'm excited. I love living in Huntsville, and it's nice to kind of branch out and meet people. And as I kind of start my new life here, I really appreciate your time. Do you live in Athens?
I do.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so you got to go back to Athens, but so that is not lost on me when people are busy and you got stuff going on. But hopefully, this has also been a nice little respite for you.
This has been awesome. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
No problem, man. All right, Tony Mac.
All right.
All the best.